Duth. Let's jump to the Niners here as far as the team. What do you think of the 49ers on the back end? Because Lenore and some of the guys were talking at the OTAs about, almost like they've been humbled watching film with Steve Wilks. Like, hey, you know what? I thought we had a pretty good year, but man, after reassessing, we didn't have a very good year. And they got a lot of young players. I mean, look at this: Lenore, Luter, Ambry Thomas, Hufanga, Jair Brown, not to mention Womack. I love this kid, Deshaun Jameson. I mean,
that's your guy, man.
I love him. I love him. We can talk more about him, but that's 7 young DBs for Wilks's back end. I think we're going to see, this is the area of the team I think is going to grow up and really start to come on. Give me your thoughts on the Niners secondary. Let's start there, because I think everybody kind of viewed that as their defensive flaw. And I think that's becoming less of a weakness and more of a strength.
Yeah. But by way of our scheme, we cater to our defense. We cater to our front seven. We do. So the guys in the back end are asked to play a lot vanilla. They play a vanilla coverage. They're not given a lot of wrinkles or a lot of dexterity in the things that they're asked to do, especially in different positions on the field. They don't do a lot of blitzing. I can't remember the last time we traveled corners, where corners go from one side to the other.
Right.
Also, I feel like we started a little bit with a I don't want to say enthusiastic game plan with our DBs at the beginning of the season last year. If you remember, we were playing press man and we were daring to get beat deep. And that's when we had E-Man, before E-Man got hurt. I really saw how I started to see how they were going to shape our attack from the back end defensively. However, I feel like with E-Man going down, we kind of changed what we did on the back end. We kind of circled the wagons and allowed our defensive line and our front seven to kind of control what happens. Basically trying to get to the ball as quick as possible and doing our best on the back end without getting beat deep. Now, I love what Gip brought us, because I think that Gip is a true one-man high safety. I think that's how he makes his living. But in turn, that allowed Huff to play a little bit more free. Right. And because he's so young and we saw early success from Huff early on, I feel like Huff got a lot of attributes put on his game that he didn't necessarily earn yet earlier into the season. And I feel as though we saw some of those deficiencies later in the season with getting beat deep, playing with bad eyes, looking at the quarterback and trying to anticipate routes rather than staying true to what's in front of you. And I believe that hurt Huff. Now, what's beautiful about that is that we actually saw a little bit of bounce back from how Huff was playing earlier on. And he played very well in the playoffs. He actually closed the season out very well after what, in my opinion, is pretty much his worst game as a defensive back against Oakland. Las Vegas. Sorry. Moving on with the safeties, I do believe that bringing in Jair Brown is almost an indictment on the age and the production that they want out of that position for us in the secondary. I'm not mad at that, because they think the kid is a steal. Personally, Coach Poindexter, he recruited my little brother to UVA, the DB coach at Penn State.
Okay.
So I know Dex, and Dex is thrilled about Jair. I feel as though that we have another guy that wants to be a leader and wants to be a leader quick. As far as our corners are concerned, Travarius Ward, I'm concerned on whether or not Travarius Ward truly wants to be an elite corner. And that sounds crazy to just say that out loud, right? But he got his money, right? He's already on a good defense. How good do you want to be, right? Because I've seen stretches of gameplay out of Travarius where you almost forget about him. He's so smooth. He's such a big corner. He's strong. He's not herky-jerky as far as it takes a lot to get him out of phase. But bad things, they compile big on Travarius. If he gets beat deep, they coming right back at him. One of the things that I know is that Travarius is going to be very good with Wilks because he's a physical corner. I see Wilks using Travarius Ward how he used J.C. Horn with the Panthers, being able to travel, go from each side of the field, and being able to blitz. I want to be able to see that from all of our corners coming in. Now with the number 2 corner spot, I feel like it's at large. It could be Demo, it could be Luter, it could even be Sam Womack. Honestly, I like Sam Womack.
Oh, I love him. He had an awesome OTAs. He looked great.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to see that, honestly. But
wait till you see him this summer, Coach. This guy's flying all over. Did
he get bigger?
Field. I don't know that he got noticeably bigger, but his play speed was noticeable.
Okay.
Noticeable.
Oh, yeah, and those are some of the things that I like about Sam. Sam, even if Sam, it's almost you know how this works, Larry. If we're looking for one position, what the guys don't understand is that we're really looking for 2 because we got to get a backup anyway, right? So if we get usually the backup guy who is not, I don't want to say good enough, but doesn't do enough to be the opposite corner of Travarius, is going to end up being our nickel, right? So I feel like we have a good problem. We have a good problem that we have at the other corner spot, because right now I see 3 viable guys that I feel okay with putting in that spot opposite Travarius Ward. However, that also means that in turn, we have at least 2 viable guys for the nickel spot. So I'm pleased with what we're doing from a development and personnel standpoint with our secondary. And then with coaching, I mean, what can't you say about Coach Wilks? Calm, cool, collected. His reputation precedes him. He's class personified around the league as far as what he's done with DBs. And even if you just look at what he did as a head coach with Carolina, it was impressive. I really like what Coach Wilks is going to bring to this defense. And then also, what's really good is that I feel like he doesn't really have that much bandwidth to spend on the front 7, right? That's all, because that's the number 1 part of our number 1 defense, right?
And that's Chris's baby for the most part, right? That's Koseric's baby. I mean, he's
right. I didn't want to say that, but it's the truth. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
The D-line, Coach Wilks is coming in there, poking his head into the D-line meetings. Like, you guys all right in there? All right, I'll talk to you later. So that's one of the things that I like. And it also helps because it makes sense on why Wilks wants to call games from the booth. He's a DB's coach, right? And he wants to be able to see the field, in my opinion. As soon as I heard that Coach Wilks wants to go into the booth, it made complete sense to me. I'm like, he's a DB coach. What does he need to be down there breathing over Coach Koseric's next floor with the D lineman?
Well, and you can't see the angles from the ground.
You can't see them. Yeah. So I think that this is perfect. I understand. He hasn't done anything as far as a coach is concerned where I wasn't able to interpretate, right? I see what he's doing, and I'm pleased for our defense. If crazy enough, I think our defense has an opportunity to be better than what we were last year.
And that's saying something because they were number 1 in the league, but I hear
exactly.
you. By the way, I think Wilks is the perfect hire from a lot of perspectives. One, they didn't want to change their front. They like what they're doing on defense up front. They feel like they want to have continuity. Here's a guy that commands the room. And I love what he said they said, "Hey, Coach, how are you going to spend your off time?" He's like, "I'm going to sit on my porch in North Carolina, and I'm going to smoke a cigar." But, it's funny. I just think that he's got a great eye for talent, and he's going to give that back end. He's going to coach it up. He's going to teach those guys things, and he's going to issue a level of accountability that I don't want to say wasn't there because that's kind of a passing judgment on the last coach. But I think he's just going to up that level of accountability. Tyler Caressley says, "Do you think, Coach, that change during the season with Mosley getting hurt was out of fear of getting beat deep on the 9 routes on the go route?" What do you think? I mean, Mosley went down. I thought they were a noticeably less physical team against the run off the edges without Mosley. And I thought they lost a real alpha when they lost him. And now they've lost 2 alphas with Mosley moving on and Jimmy Ward moving on. What do you think of the super chat from Tyler?
Number one, Tyler's my guy, man. I be saying Tyler's almost in all of my shows.
Okay, awesome.
But yeah, I do agree. Emmanuel Mosley was a huge loss.
Yeah,
huge,
very underrated.
Very underrated.
And he didn't get a lot of money. Get a lot of money. Neither did Jimmy. These guys left for not a lot of, there wasn't a big difference, I'm sure, in money that they were offering.
They didn't get yanked out of here. There wasn't a lot. Losing Jimmy, if anybody has the tape, just go back and look at us before E-Man got hurt on defense. Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, but we both scouted, right? Just think about your eye. It looked like a talent gap with E-Man on the field on defense, where guys were moving so fast and we were moving at such a high clip efficiently that it almost looked like we were playing against college guys with just the speed. We were getting to spots before offenses were even there, with E-Man on the field. And I believe that losing him was one of those worst case scenarios. Like, it cannot happen. Almost look at our corner situation in 2020 where we lost E-Man, and then I think Jason Verrett came back for one game and he got hurt. It was just like we just could not get that corner spot together. And E-Man, it has to go somewhere, right, Faithful? If we're going to spend and put all of our energy into our defensive line and our linebacking core, yes, we can put together a good a good secondary. But you do have to be honest, is that when you stretch it out and look at it from a 10,000-foot view, it leaves a lot to be desired on what we can and cannot do because we're thin at secondary, right? So with E-Man being gone, I do believe that it completely changed the trajectory of how our defense attacks offenses. I do feel like that we went a lot softer on our secondary. I mean, even when we had Demo closing out the season the year before last, I mean, Jesus, he was playing with so much cushion you couldn't even see him on the broadcast view. Sometimes, like, he was playing with so much cushion off receivers. So they definitely were circling the wagons from a secondary standpoint. And the indictment of that was even that season that I'm talking about, even with us having E-Man coming off injury, we went out and spent money on Travarius. So in a way, we've always been trying to kind of put a Band-Aid on our secondary issues, right? And losing Jimmy Ward, which is a homegrown talent, and I feel like that's something that we didn't necessarily get the most out of Jimmy because Jimmy was perpetually playing out of position, right? So I feel as though that what we're doing with secondary now is that we're shoring it up. We're actually getting, I feel as though what we're also doing is we're kind of getting some developmental keys from Coach Wilks. I mean, you know how it is, Larry. Every coach can't take everything out of the building. Well, they're gonna steal something from them. You know what I'm saying? So,
what do you think of Oliver, Coach? Because Khalil's saying, Larry, how did Oliver look out there?
He's huge.
I think Oliver, to me, looks like an upgrade in coverage off Jimmy Ward. He's not an upgrade as far as personality. Jimmy Ward was a true alpha. He's not an upgrade as far as a hitter or as an intimidator, but the league's changed and coverage is got to be prioritized over that thumper, over that big hitter, over that DB that's going to separate the receiver from the ball. I like Oliver. I think with Oliver, there's a chance he could give them a better cover guy than what Ward gave them.
See, now I agree with you, Larry, right? But this is how ball is funny, though, right? Oliver may give us something that Jimmy didn't give us in one area, right? But you know how football starts, man. When football starts, it's all hands on deck, right? You don't play a position, you play football, right? And look at what we had to do with Jimmy. Thank God Jimmy had the dexterity in his skill set to be able to play multiple positions for us to keep the defense at a certain level, right? One would even say that Jimmy almost played out of position to help us be a number one defense. My thing is that Isaiah is coming in to actually fix a wrong in coverage as far as the slot and dime initiatives are concerned for our secondary. That's fine. But what can Isaiah play safety? Can Isaiah come down and guard tight ends? Can Isaiah do everything that we ultimately didn't want from Jimmy, but at the end of the day, we ultimately ended up needing from him because of how it shaped out. That's my
Jimmy was a Swiss Army knife. Jimmy could do it all. He could play any position. He could play linebacker. He hit like a linebacker, covered like a corner. He was a very unique player. I just think Oliver gives them. Oliver struggled at Colorado, and he struggled in his first couple of years in the pros on the boundary. But I think he kind of found his home last year in that nickel spot. And if he can just play this year the way he played last year in the nickel,
it's an upgrade.
I think that's going to give us an upgrade in coverage. Mm-hmm. Everything else, they're going to miss Jimmy. And they're going to really miss Jimmy's. There's certain guys that get the rest of the group ready to go. And Jimmy was that kind of a guy. And they're going to miss Jimmy's toughness and leadership. He had a presence in that locker room where Oliver, and I had a chance to ask him a couple questions, but I think he views himself as a leader. He understands he's one of the veteran guys in a young secondary, but it's going to take a minute for him to really win over the room and have that voice that Jimmy had, because he could do it all. Jimmy could be like, hey, if you're not doing your job, I can step in and do your job. Don't listen to me because I'm telling you. Listen to me because I can actually do your job better than you.
I'm actually showing you.
Yeah, I can show you.